Hey, happy Sunday. This is PFG.Live, the podcast that asks, is your local flat reference the same as your space-time curvature? Welcome aboard. Let's see, we got DBX is reporting white plains at 010 at 6 knots, visibility 10 miles, few clouds at 3,000, broken at 8,000, temperature 03, dew point -3, altimeter 2974. Unix Carbide in Brooklyn is reporting 38 degrees Frankenstein, wet snow starting, winter advisory, 8.69% in the chamber. Let's see, who do we got? We got Tucker, says 22 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with snow on the ground and more expected later in Buffalo, New York. Welcome, Tuck. Evils from the Ghent, Belgium reports, let's see, auto 20.1, 4.0 dew point, 33.1% relative humidity, a millibars of 1020.94. You're awesome. Dale reporting from Snow, Mexico, -26 centigrade, -26 centigrade, and partial clouds in northwest Snow, Mexico. Welcome. Bill Olney from Rome, New York, home of Air Force Research Labs, 21 degrees Frankenstein, but going to be a cold week. Yes, it will. Josh is with us, who gives us an audio check. Also from southern Manitoba at Station Charlie, X-Ray Mike Delta says that the winds are 300 at 8 knots, -25, with a dew point of -31. Wow. Was it? OC John, welcome aboard, sir. He says it's 56 degrees and mostly cloudy in sunny Southern California. And also thinking of your buddies up north of you. Hope they are making do with the fires. Art that makes art, welcome aboard, sir. 25 degrees and mostly sunny in south central Idaho. Have some onions, eh? Ugly Skull's here. Hi, Ugly Skull. He says it's 23 degrees science, partly cloudy, 25 kilometers visibility, 95% humidity, 1,008 hectopascals. We just, CJ Stevens says, hello, it's 34 and lightly snowing in East Tennessee. Welcome aboard, sir. He says to stay warm. Carl Tauber, 43 degrees, 43 Fahrenheit, people. And the sun is gone, gray and drizzling in the People's Republic of Rhode Island. And here in Windham, New Hampshire, I can report that it is also 39 degrees. Paul Morley is here from the Dallas, Texas, giving us the DFW METAR. He says it's 340 at 11, gusting 19 knots, visibility 10 miles, scattered at 25,000. Temperature 00, dew point -16, altimeter 3053. And at the Manchester, New Hampshire airport, winds are 310 at 6 knots, visibility 10 miles, few clouds at 2,800, broken at 9,500, temperature 06, dew point -03, altimeter 2978, and the remarks are unimportant. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Fun week in the shop. Got a lot done. Did a lot of posting to the Instagram, which we'll talk about some of that today, and we had a fun time. So welcome aboard. We talked about my wife's Mercedes. So you may recall when we last met our heroes that I spoke to the Mercedes guru, and he said, it's going to need a new head. And he meant a head. And he assured me that some of the Mercedes engines had shipped with faulty heads, and they redesigned it, gave it a new part number, and then they're putting these new heads on these engines for free. And we picked up the vehicle, and it was perfect. They did a great job. So the vehicle is back, the head is brand new, and the wallet is not any lighter. So that was the good news. So our agent is back in the field. And we can report on that as it goes. Let's see. What else happened this week? I was working on making some blivets. And those of you who follow me on Instagram And if you don't, I mean, shouldn't you? Watch that. And we made them. We got them done. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about those things today. But in the process of getting those things made, I had to figure out how to hold these little cylindrical blivets, and that is what led to the whole collet discussion. So I want to talk about that today at some length. This podcast is brought to you by PFG.Stones.com. So if you need something flat, that's where it's at, PFG.Stones.com. I got a question on Instagram about the PFG stones, specifically because I was doing rounds this week. I was doing the 4-inch aluminum oxide rounds, and I was doing the 4-inch silicon carbide rounds because I had a customer that ordered 2 sets of each. You know who you are. Thank you for your order. So somebody asked me, well, when do you use one and when do you use the other? So I wanted to just address that briefly, because I wish I could sit here and give you like a half an hour on the all the scientific reasons that you should use one over the other. But the fact is that the rules are a little different in PFG stones and their applications than they are when you're running a grinding wheel doing a normal surface grinding operation. So aluminum oxide grits are not as sharp as silicon carbide grits. But they're less friable, they're stronger. So you sort of have different reasons to use each. However, there are some chemical reasons. I know Carl just sat up straight in his chair. There are some chemical reasons to use one over the other when you're dealing with certain metals. For example, would you use an aluminum oxide stone, fast or slow, on aluminum? So I would tend to shy away from that, because if you picture a piece of aluminum, do I have anything aluminum here? No, I don't. But if you picture a piece of aluminum that has a surface that you might want to make precise. Oh yes, the mic body in front of me. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's aluminum. So when you look at a piece of aluminum, you don't see aluminum. This is the sort of a standard line I give when people come to the shop or something. Is you look at aluminum, you don't see aluminum, you see aluminum oxide. And if you take out your knife and you scrape it, you get to see aluminum for about a microsecond, and then you see aluminum oxide. So, here we go. I was completely incorrect. I have a piece of aluminum right here. My can of coolant, courtesy of Maritool. This is aluminum. Except, are you looking at aluminum? No, you're looking at aluminum oxide. So aluminum is extremely reactive. It's the most reactive metal we deal with. It doesn't sound right, but it is right. Yes. So Dale knows the trick. If you put a drop of oil on your aluminum and then you scrape it, then you're looking at oil followed by aluminum. But as soon as it sees oxygen, boom, it oxidizes. So if you had a surface that was precision and aluminum, I know some people think those two don't go together. Sometimes they do. I would tend to go with a silicon carbide, even in a PFG stone, with a caveat that's coming up in a second. So that's one reason. However, the stones themselves, the aluminum oxide stones, have a more open structure. So there's a place for... Hi, Robin. Robin just checked in. There's a place for the swarf to go in the interstitial space between the grits, whereas the silicon carbide stone on the fine side, I should have one here, but I don't, is very tight. It's a very, very closed structure. On the coarse side of the silicon carbide stone, it's much more open. So if I was doing an aluminum thing, I would probably reach for the silicon carbide round PFG stone if I needed to. Does it mean you can't use a rectangular PFG stone on aluminum? No, it does not mean that, but you have to be a little careful. Also, the trick of using WD-40 and cardboard to clean them is outstanding. By the way, we're getting heavy snowfall predicted for 6 o'clock now, so they pushed it off a little bit. So the answer to your question, anonymous questioner, is that for many purposes you could use either the aluminum oxide or the silicon carbide, but the silicon carbide fine side is very, very smooth. Oh, thanks, Dale. There's a picture of it. It's super smooth, and when we PFG it, okay, and we do our recipe on it, it's absurdly smooth. So it depends what you're doing. But oh, fun fact, if you look at the picture on your screen, and for you audio guys, I'll describe it. The aluminum oxide rounds are like a hockey puck, except 4 inches, not 3 inches, as is regulation. I don't want to get the Canadians angry at me, but they're just a hockey puck, whereas the 4-inch round silicon carbide stones have this deep finger groove, and they are frequently called knife stones. And a while back, I found out why they're called knife stones. Is because they're used frequently in shears, like big shear, shear machines cutting stuff, and they're used to sharpen the shear blades. And the groove, the finger groove, is a place for your fingers so that you can keep them. So that's why it's called a knife stone. Oh, thanks, man. You're Johnny on the spot. There's a picture of the 4-inch round in aluminum oxide. So it kind of depends a little bit on what you're doing, a little bit on personal preference, but that's sort of the pedigree of where they come from. But they're both they're a joy to make. I have to say they're fantastic, very, very satisfying. So I was live on Discord getting ready, getting my grind ready, getting my grind on, and I was unboxing. I was talking to the guys and I was unboxing the silicon carbide stones, and I unboxed one, and I put it, and I have a bucket. I'm recycling the cardboard, and I put it down on the bench, and I look over, and it's spinning. Now, I made sure it was not a magnetic effect, so don't worry. But it was turning, and that was when I made that post. I turned it over, and I took a flat bar that I have kicking around at the grinder for various reasons, and I put it on top of it, and I just spun it. So this stone came from the factory with this dome in it, which I measured, and I think I said it was 25 thousandths out of flat. That was actually incorrect. It's half that, because I pushed my flat on it, and I shoved a shim in, and the shim was 25 thousandths. So really, it was only half that out of flat. But that's how they start. And that was probably one of the worst ones I've seen in a while. But now they're perfect after getting the treatment. DBX just posted the radar for our area, and it's a coming. Anywho, so I'm glad Robin's here, because I may have some questions, but I was getting ready to do this job. Let me give you I'll give you the spoiler first. Okay, here's the parts that I made, and they came out just lovely. For you guys on audio, they're gorgeous. What can I tell you? One side, it's a little cylinder. It's about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch long. One side has a little cylindrical nub of a particular diameter, and the other side has this duck bill that the center slot is 55 thousandths wide, and then it's thinned down on the right and the left of that slot. That came out great, and I had to figure out how to hold it for machining. So the first operation on that, which is also in the thumbnail, the first operation was just holding it in, holding the stock in the lathe and doing the There we go. Doing the back end of it, which had the little protrusion. And that was easy. That was basically face, do the OD, face it, do the little nubber, and then cut it off. So I stood there and I did those. That was in op 2, I did the super glued backstop trick. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get this done? And then I started thinking about a collets. I have a collet chuck, and I'm like, oh, I could change to my collet chuck, and then I can use the appropriate collet, and I could start doing that. And then I realized that was probably more work than I wanted to do. My 3-jaw chuck is very good. It's a Sanchuli, which is Korean, and it's very, very good. And I haven't been abusing it, so it's been holding thousandths. And I said, you know what? I got an idea. So I took a little piece of aluminum, probably 30 thousandths thick aluminum, and I took my shears and I cut it, and I actually made sure it was flat-ish, and then I super glued it to one of the jaws of the 3-jaw chuck to act as a stop. It worked perfectly, and it was very rugged. It lasted the whole job. I only had to do it, use it 30 times, and it worked great. So, from a work holding standpoint, it was a near zero cost win. I didn't have to break out the collet chuck and the collet stops and the blah blah blah. I just turned it around, had a little stop, and it was very repeatable. I mean, I think everything held within a thousandth. So that was op 2. In op 2, it got basically the end was faced, and then it got a chamfer, a big heavy cone on the end of the part. And that was op 2. And we were done on the lathe. Yes, John, we were done on the lathe. So then it went over to op 3. So op 3 was interesting. And op 3 was, how am I going to hold this thing vertically in the milling, in the vertical machining center to do the duck-billed platypus on the end. And that's when I started like chaining things together. So what I ended up doing is I ended up using a collet block, which I'll explain if you guys aren't familiar. The collet block, in turn, held a collet chuck, and the collet chuck held the part. And let's build that up for you. So the collet block, I didn't bring a collet block up, held a 5C collet, the first collet of the day, right? We're going to go through a bunch of collets and talk about them. But here's the 5C collet, and I think if you're a machinist and you're breathing, you know what a 5C collet is. I don't consider this the oldest collet or the first collet I've ever seen, but we'll talk about this one first. So the 5C collet is used in lots of work holding, and the other collet that's very old and that you kind of see early on is the R8 collet. So we didn't use the R8 collet in this process, but the R8 collet is what's in the nose of a Bridgeport. Oh, thanks, Dale. Dale, you're awesome. Dale posted a picture of collet blocks. So those are integral collet blocks for an ER series collet. I don't have one of those. We had this discussion. So let's get the R8 out of the way, because in our story about this process, it doesn't really have much to do with it. ER32s. Okay, thank you, sir. So an R8 collet is what you get in the nose of a Bridgeport. Okay, that's the built-in taper in a Bridgeport, and that will hold your tools. So let's talk a little bit about how this collet works, and then we'll work our way up through the collets, and we'll end up with my fixture here. The R8 collet has a threaded hole on the back, and a drawbar drops down from the top on the Bridgeport, and it yanks up on it, and there's a taper in the spindle of the Bridgeport that will ride on the taper of the R8 collet and close it. Okay. Then there's an indexing groove which picks up a pin so that it's fixed in position. Now, some people will argue you don't need that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to look at the construction. So there's two things I want you to look at. One is there's a precision cylinder at the top of the R8 collet, and then at the bottom there's a precision taper. And those are the important parts of the collet. The center part here has been reduced. So this guy is going to ride, the top of the cylindrical part is going to ride in a precision hole in the spindle, and then the bottom part is going to ride on the taper. So when the drawbar pulls it up, the collet is going to close. Okay. Now, there's a problem with this. And the problem with this design is that there's only 3 cuts in the collet. And when it closes, it's going to pivot, on average, at the bottom of the slot. Okay? So the angle of the gripping surface in the collet is only going to be, or I shouldn't say angle, but the surface of the gripping surface in the collet is only going to be coplanar with the surface of your tool when they're the same size. If you put in something that's smaller or bigger, and bigger you're going to know because you're going to have to jam it in there, and then you tighten it up, it's going to be at an angle. Okay, the precision surface in the collet is now going to close, and it's going to be at an angle. It's going to grab at the lips, at the outer edge, but the back of it is not grabbing the tool. So it can have some imprecision, or it could have some play in it. So the lesson there is that the R8 collet and others, which we're going to talk about, is only meant to grab the size it's designed for within pretty tight limits. Okay. So another collet, so that's the R8 collet. And Unix Carbide points out that the R8 is also common for many benchtop mills and lathes. Okay. And it's cool. These have been around since the dawn of time. They're inexpensive. You can get them. But just keep in mind, they're not meant to grab a wide range of diameters. In this case, it's used to grab a tool in a Bridgeport. Unix Carbide is pointing out that it's also used for grabbing work in one of these small benchtop lathes. So that's the R8, okay? I don't know the origin of R8, but we're not going to play history students right now. Let's march on to the other collet we mentioned briefly, which is the 5C collet. So the 5C collet is generally meant for work holding. And it is very similar, if not identical, to the R8 collet in that it has 3 slots. Okay. It has a size associated with it. And it has a groove, there it is, that can index it. And then it has instead of a drawbar, it has an OD thread, which grabs it and pulls it into a taper. Now you'll notice that there's no that the outer surface, the cylinder is the precision cylinder, and then there's the taper. It's not meant to grab a wide range of diameters. It's meant to grab the size that it's made for. It will grab smaller than indicated, but it's not ideal. Yes, it also has an ID thread. So Dale is pointing out that not only does it have an OD thread, it also has an ID thread. So the ID thread is interesting in that I don't know if it's ever used for tightening the 5C collet. I have not seen that. But you could put a work stop in there. There are these nice threaded work stops. So you thread it in, and then it puts a pin up in the hole, and you can adjust the depth of the pin so you can stick your work in the 5C collet and it hits the pin. That works great, except that when you go to tighten the collet, by definition, it's yanking back the whole thing. Okay. There are systems where instead of yanking back the 5C collet, ID thread is used on 5C. You want to come in and talk about this? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. The ID thread is useful, but I've never seen it pull the collet in. Have you? Is okay? Yeah, just push the button. Let's see. Boo boo. We're gonna bring Robin in to lend some wisdom here. Mr. Robin Renzetti, you should be on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? Good morning.
Excellent. I was trying to type that the internal thread is used on the Decal clone 5C heads, at least the one I have.
Okay.
So it actually pulls the collet with the internal thread, not the external thread.
Excellent. Okay. That's the first time I've
And
heard of it.
and
Yep.
and old 5C collets don't always have internal threads.
But they have both, or there are old ones that only have internal.
No, no, the other way around. They always have the external, but there are a lot of old collets you might find in a
Okay.
yard sale or something may not have the internal threads.
Well, this one I'm holding probably is an import, and they tend to have both.
Hmm.
So the question is, what's the one I brought up for show and tell? Unfortunately, was one of the teeny weeny ones. It's a 16th. But what kind of range do we get out of a 5C collet? Do they? I mean, is it five minus 5 thousandths is considered acceptable? Um,
It yes, you can clamp on something 5,000s. Um, One of the things that when you mentioned in the beginning, I agree with you in principle that in theory, when the 5C collet flexes and it's theoretically flexing at the end of the slots,
yep,
that and meaning that the whatever angle that is, that's the angle of the conical gripping surface that you have on the inside of the collet now,
yep.
except that beam formed by that collet is not infinitely rigid. Therefore, it can do an S
It'll
bend
do an S
when
turn,
you
right?
tighten it enough, right? And so yeah,
So it has a
but yeah,
little
yeah,
it has a little conformity
yeah,
because of the S bend,
yeah.
but not a ton.
Um, the other one of the things is that it's always better if you have a little room, if you're trying to grip something firmly, it's better to have a part that's oversized rather than undersized,
Yep,
because the contact pattern of the two conical surfaces, if it's undersized and it closes, it starts to hit on the outer edges, then the outer edges at the slot, that becomes your contact point. That means the actual inclined plane vector is perpendicular to that, meaning the resultant that's actually clamping goes way down.
mm,
If you go the other way, you go bigger, it hits in a line contact in the center of the collet on the outside, center of the segment, and you get the true mechanical action of that inclined plane.
gotcha. One of our guys, RC Diesel, says typically 5 thousandths undersized max. I use Hardinge 5DS. Gotcha. Art that makes art says older Hardinge 5Cs didn't have the internal threads. I needed to buy an old 1-inch collet to get 1-inch bar through my collet closer. Gotcha. So that's the 5C, and in my case, it's used in my spin jig uses 5Cs or allows for 5Cs, and the collet blocks that I use. And Dale showed a couple of pictures of collet blocks. He says these have a tapped collar that moves, so the collet does not. Yeah, so there are mechanisms that hold the collet stable and then run a collar up over the taper to close it so that it's not moving the part. And those there's a name for there was a brand name for that, which I'm trying to remember. What was didn't Hardinge have a version of that? Was that Zero? I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, there are ways to do that for work holding. Let's see. So that's the 5C collet. What else do we need to know about a 5C collet that I forgot to bring up?
Along with well, the other thing that you have to consider is thin wall parts. As you get into holding them,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not exactly on size, you're going to get the triangulated shape because the collet shape stays the same but
Right.
isn't on the right location, and
So it'll
you can
either
get that action.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the 5C is intended to be used for the size that's on it, and if you use it for that, everything's glorious. And if you depart from that, you're going to pay a price, and that's a challenge. Um, another 5C variant is the emergency collet, and here's an emergency collet in 5C. The emergency collet is not hardened, or it's hardened lightly, so that it ships with some pins in it, and then you can drill out and bore out and do whatever you have to do in the nose of the collet to make a custom collet. And that's called, you'll hear that term, emergency collet. And that's what that is in 5C. And otherwise, this still has the internal threads and the external threads. This was a Lindgren, I believe. This is actually nice quality. Okay, so the next collet in the series. Let me throw out the exotics before we get to the ones that I care about. Here's a one called a TG100, and it's just a big boy, and it's meant for holding high torque things. But the TG100 in our discussion introduces the slots that come from the back and the front. And it has some interesting slot designs, but the basic idea is that whereas the 5C and the R8 only hinged from the back, okay, the TG100 is the first example we looked at that can hinge from the front and the back, which will allow it to close parallel, so it doesn't do what we just talked about. It doesn't tip to the nose if it's undersized, or put the heels in if it's oversized. So yeah, and Dale points out that the TG has a shallow taper, and the shallow taper is a function of it being able to hold with a lot more holding power. So that's the TG100. I have a TG100 collet holder. I don't remember the last time I used it. So we have some of those. But that introduces the idea of the hinge in the front and the hinge in the back, which leads us directly to our favorite, my favorite, which is the ER series collets. Okay. And I'm going to ask you some questions in a second here, Robin, about the nose of the ER series collet. But here's a collet. If you're on video, there's an ER32. Okay. And then there's another one I have here, which is the ER16. And they're just literally a size difference, but they're functionally, they're the same. So I'm just gonna wave around the ER32. So the ER32 again is a design where there's many slots. I don't know the exact number. I guess there's 8. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 8 one way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 8 one way and 8 the other way. So 8 of them are attached in the front, 8 of them are attached in the back. And when you put this into its taper, it's going to close again uniformly. The very interesting thing about the ER series collets, and to some extent the TG series collets, is that they are designed to accommodate a range, because they do have the ability to close over a much longer range. So if we look at the markings on this one, oh, I'm sorry, I'm holding the ER25. But here's the ER32, and this says 1/8, 1/8, and sometimes this one doesn't, but I have a bunch of them that actually give the range. Oh, look at it. So Dale just posted a picture showing a big honker, the ER40, and a little bitty one, the ER11. So they are able to take a range of sizes, and this is a good choice if you have to hold, work or a tool that is, other than one of your standard sizes. So I'm gonna show 2 more collets, and then we're gonna come back to how you hold the ERs, which is gonna lead us into the rest of the story on the parts that I made. So here's a homemade, real quick collet. So we take a piece of aluminum, we turn it OD, we drill a hole in it, and really this is sort of like a makeup collet. And then we take it over to the bandsaw, and we very expertly, as you can tell from the lovely shape of the slots, we cut some slots in it. 2 from one direction, 2 from the other direction, and Bob's your uncle. You have a working, usable piece of collet. So you can make one of these things real quick. This is an example. Again, slots in the front, slots in the back. It will conform. Robin says, I need a roll-in saw. Yeah, I need a lot of things, Robin. I need a shop that's twice as big. And another example of a quick and dirty is a single slot collet. Again, this was made in the shop. I actually made a series of these. This is aluminum, and it's got a slot on one side, and it's got just a stress relief in the flange so it can bend, and it just has to flex a little bit to hold something. Now, this particular collet is an aluminum collet that went into an aluminum fixture that was used to hold. Anybody want to guess why an aluminum collet in an aluminum fixture? Anybody want to guess? If you get it right, you win a sandwich in the after show. Anybody? Bueller? No, nobody. So this was used to hold a magnet. Okay. It's what you had on hand. No, it actually had to be non-magnetic. So this was holding a neodymium magnet of absurd strength. And so everything had to be aluminum. So it was an aluminum collet. I haven't shown you the fixture. In an aluminum fixture with the screws were 3/16 stainless, and it had to be that way. So again, you whip up a quick collet that way. And now my collet bucket is empty. So let's go back to the ER, my favorite, the ER series. Okay. Hugely useful items. Now, I used for this project this lovely tool from one of my favorite companies, Mary Tool. Okay. And there's the part number. It's an ER32 holder and a 1-inch straight shank. And that's very simple. So I'm able to use this wherever I need it. So what I did is I took a collet block, and let's see, somebody posted a picture of the collet block. Yeah, so I'm putting there's Dale's picture back in view. I put a collet block that had a 5C collet with a 1-inch 5C collet in the collet block with a short collar to tighten it. I dropped this thing in it. I held the 5C. Let's see if I might have a picture of the overall setup here. In fact, I know I have a picture of the overall setup. Let's see. I posted it on Instagram. There it is. Yeah. So there we go. Oh, that's a video. That's actually a video. So the collet block was grabbed by my vise on the table of the VMC. The collet block held this thing, and then this thing held an ER32 collet. Now, the ER32 collet holder, if we unscrew it and we open it up, let's get rid of this picture here. First of all, you'll notice it's a little blue. And I'll give Robin one guess as to why it's just a little blue. Okay. Smurf juice. So there's your taper on the inside, and then there's a little work stop that sticks up, and you can screw that little work stop in or out, which, by the way, we took advantage of. The collet, this is the thing on ERs. You have to do this correctly. If you look inside the ring, you'll see there's a little offset cut, and you want to tip in the collet so that it literally snaps into. Hang on, I can't do this with. I got to put down the Smurf juice. There it is. You look at the side that has the opening, and you tip it away from the opening, and then you rock it in, and now it's actually held. Okay. So the collet is now held, and now you drop it into your taper. Now, one of the reasons I brought Robin in, because I have a question, is that really there's a taper on the front of the collet, and then, of course, there's the main taper on the back of the collet. The groove is what's holding it in the collet nut. So my question is, the front taper, that's riding on a taper inside of the collet nut. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then when you tighten it, you have this steep taper in the front. And then, of course, you have your long, shallow taper in the back. And then everything gets squozed together, and it's able to grab the part or the tool very evenly. And these are great because it doesn't do that little bendy thing that the 5C or the R8 does. The other thing about the ER collets is when you tighten them and you go to loosen them, you'll find out that the nut actually gets loose, but then the collet's not loose. It actually yanks up on the collet to loosen it. And this was the setup I used for holding these little cylindrical parts. There's one more trick to the setup, in that the pin that comes in the Marry tool holder was not small enough to reach up into my collet to touch these little weeny parts that I was making. So what I did is I dropped a piece of the same material, same brass material with two nice ends that was a little smaller than the part. I just dropped it in, and that rode on the stop, and that served as the bumper for my part dropping in, and it worked spectacularly well. So those are my favorites for all sorts of things. I use them on the grinder. In fact, I use this Marry tool collet chuck on the grinder by putting this nice 1-inch shaft in my spin jig. and that works out great. And I've used that several times. So there is your ER32s and your ER series. And thank you very much to. Go ahead, Robin.
I've posted before on Instagram probably several times. You have to be very careful about gripping work in this style of collet relative to the engaged length, because if that part's only, let's say, engaged a third of the way into the collet, that collet's going to close smaller in the back, can actually smash the back of your part, basically, permanently deform it.
Yeah.
So you either have to put a pin to stabilize it back there, or make sure you're engaged. Knowing that's the case, and sometimes when you're using end mills and things, you need to grip them by uh, less than that you'd like to. In other words, less than full collet length. And that's where you want to use the smallest ER series that can hold that shank, because its length is shorter and you end up with a larger percentage of the length gripping and a better hold.
That's a great point. And I should have been using my ER25s, except I didn't have I didn't have the collet holder. So that's a really good point, is that you can deform the part because the pressure is going to come in, and it's going to want to press in toward the back. In my case, I had a sufficient engagement of the part, the length of the part, that everything was pretty happy. Another thing that happened in my situation is that, and again, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. Can I do that? No, it won't let me do that. This is a video, though. What is this video? There we go. This is the actual process of cutting the slots. We'll get back to that in a minute. But when I went to tighten the ER collet, I was also putting rotation on the shaft that's being held by the 5C collet, and the shaft is a hardened, smooth shaft, and I had to be a little careful. So there, you might have seen in the video, there's a little yellow dot, little paint dot I put on the nut, the collet nut, so that I wouldn't over tighten things. So I just enough to hold that little part, but not too much. And that was the goal there. Quentin says they make ER collet nuts with bearings in them. Yes, they do. And this is not one of them. But mine did have blue schmoo, and they don't sell them with the blue schmoo. Just pointing that out. And just for fun, I want to show you another collet that I made. Here is a collet that is 3D printed, and it's got a little detail in the middle, and it uses the same technique. And I bet you nobody can guess what this is from. Dale says those aren't. Oh, the bearings. He's talking about the bearings. Holding round stones? No, incorrect. But nice try. Notice it does have a taper on the outside, and it has kind of a stepped cylinder on the inside. Balancing stand? Nope. Nice try. Cookie cutter? No. Okay, I'll tell you. So I bought you're very close. Actually, Tuck came closest. I bought a widget which goes into a tea mug, the cup holder in the truck, and then you tighten it, and it's supposed to tighten on the tea holder, on the mug holder in the truck, and then it gives you a little not a tripod, but it gives you a little stand to which I mount a radio. This is for the ICOM 705, in case you're wondering. But in the Ford Lightning, in the front, those mug holders are the fancy ones with that can handle really big honkin' mugs, or the small mugs, so they have these spring-loaded widgies in it, which completely ruins the operation of the over-the-counter device that I bought. So this is an adapter that goes over that, and makes it bigger, but still gives it the collet action. And that's what this is for. This is for my radio mount. But it works spectacularly well. So it looks like a smaller, a bigger mug on the outside and a smaller mug on the inside, and life is good. So there you go. So if you're wondering if you can 3D print collets, yes, you can. Absolutely can. Pretty neat. So we have a zillion collets to choose from. So that blends nicely into our discussion of these parts that I made. Okay. I did not have to buy any special work holding. All this stuff was kicking around. Could I have done it better? Yes, but I didn't need to because I got my 30 parts made, and that's what's important. If you go back to Dale's picture right here, I want to buy ER32 and ER, what's my other one? 25 collet holders on blocks, already on blocks, instead of going through my R5 collet. And they exist, and I'll get them, and that's what's coming next. If I had those, I think I would have been a little happier, but I don't have them yet. Let's see. RC Diesel says Schaublin invented E-series collet. ErgoFix added the groove and called it ER. Groove was needed because the taper isn't self-releasing. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I know there's a lot of history on these, and there's stuff we didn't even touch on. There's a zillion flavors of tapers and collets and stuff. So the point being is that I did what I had to do with what I had on hand to get these parts made, and if you add up the cycle times of the 3 operations, it was about, call it 6 minutes, maybe 7 minutes per part, but it was 3 ops. That's pretty good. That's good enough for me. And we got all the parts done, and we got them to spec, washed, bagged, ready for the next step in the process. And this is, by the way, the thing, some of you may be wondering, it's the thing that my squiggly bits fit into inside of my magic box, which does things and stuff. So that becomes a soldered connection, which is why that duck bill was important. It had to be thinned out so that it can be properly soldered. So I bring all that up. Let's see. I'm going to do that to say this. There's a famous quote, which I rather love, from Robert Heinlein. And I put it on the screen for you guys who are watching on video. And it goes like this. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, conn a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. And I love that quote. And if you're a one-man shop, if you're a one-man band, which I am, you kind of have to be able to do all those things. This week I negotiated, a contract with a government client. This week I cleaned the toilet in the office bathroom. This week I figured out how to, use the 17 different collets I needed to use to get my parts made. This week, I sent text messages to experts who are smarter than me to to help me solve a problem. So if I believe you should be able to do a lot of different things because you have to depend on you. You can't always depend on other people for everything. Except you also need the skill of looking at a particular thing and saying, yep, I'm not going to do that. That is not the thing. I'm going to call a guy. So I've done a lot of electrical wiring, and I'm an electrical engineer, and none of that scares me. But we have some electrical stuff we need done in the shop, in the house, and I've got an electrician, and I trust him to do the thing. And it's one of those things that I said, here's my card up here. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let him do it. Could I do it if I had to do it? Yes. If there was an emergency, can I take care of it? Absolutely. Should you be able to? You should learn. So it's sort of this tug of war between wanting to do everything and leave the specialization to the insects, to being able to say, yeah, there's a few things that I am a specialist at, and those few things I'm going to be really damn good at, and the other 200 things I'm going to be adequate at, and I am capable of saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that for another expert. Because after all, as Robin says,
I am not an expert.
So that's my take on Robert Heinlein, one of my favorite quotes, which, by the way, is hanging up over the desk here in the office where paperwork gets done. Robin, thanks for jumping in and helping out on the collets. I appreciate it. Are there any collets that I missed that you wish I talked about?
Pot collets, or the ones with the external expanding or contracting ring.
Yep.
Versus the ones that still have a 5C taper and are large. Those are, without some special modifications, are basically junk. They're good for maybe polishing because they bell mouth as soon as you tighten them. So the ones with an external closer ring are very handy, and I use those a lot.
All right.
So you can have like a 3-inch collet, a 5-inch collet, 6-inch collet, on there and hold parts very well.
Well, I think we're going to be talking about collets some more in the after show. What do you think?
Yes.
Thank you for being here, sir. Appreciate you. And we will catch you in the after show. Let's see. Okay, you guys have any questions? Oh, scroll down on Discord. There we go. Oh. See, Evil says, oh, I like that, Evils. A nice visual representation of a broad base of skills and knowledge and some in depth. Nice. I like it. Dale. Oh, yeah. What do we call those things, Dale? Those are, is it a collet? That's ID collets, expanding arbors. Yep. And those work with, again, the slots are hinging at both ends so that they can stay parallel as the tapered collet slides over the tapered arbor. Spring mandrel. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have lots to talk about. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Say thank you to everybody for being here. It was a fun week. Got work done. and looking forward to next week. We're thinking of our friends in the LA area. I don't know. Here's a question from Greenwood AG. What are your thoughts on Bamboo's latest software update? I am not a fan. It feels like they might be setting us up for a pay-to-play scheme. I honestly have no idea what that is. I do all the updates, so I am, I should be on the latest software, but I haven't seen anything weird. Evil says he thinks they're doing something to see how people react. I'm not familiar with the controversy. I have no idea. What I do know is that my Bamboos keep printing things. Usually the things I want them to print. But not always. They closed down the printer's API, so local hardware could connect to printers can't anymore. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm not too interested in the printer's API, so I would not have seen any of that. But I do know they introduce an option so that you could pay a pile of money and put whatever software you want on the machine. Was that their solution for this? That's what I remember them doing. So no, I have no comment on that. The president has no comment. Sorry. Okay, guys, you're awesome. Have a great week. If you want to join us in the after show, we'll be in the after party roundtable on the Discord server. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. If you need some flat stuff, head over to pfgstones.com. Actually, it's over there. It's right there. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just go to PFG.Live. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you already knew that. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for being there. Get flat. Stay flat. We'll see you next week.